This demonstration will show how using Aerospike as the underpinning database will produce a higher confidence factor for your fraud detection algorithm and consequently save you money resulting from fewer false positives with credit card transactions. Most fraud detection algorithms have their roots in statistical analysis. The more data points or iterations you can provide to the algorithm in a short period of time, the more confidence you will have in the result. So what I'm going to show you is a comparison of two databases. I've got an Aerospike cluster with 3 nodes and another database cluster with 3 nodes. We've got 3 clients attached to each cluster, and those 3 clients are feeding into a front end so we can see the results. What you will see across the top would be the business results, the false positives and the confidence factor, and across the bottom are the technical results, latency and throughput. And as we can see, we've got the simulation running. We're currently running at 50 credit card swipes per second and 300 iterations per swipe. Across the top, we can see that in the center we get the fraud detection confidence factor. They're both running at the same, and the money earned avoiding false positives is roughly kind of the same. We also see that the SLAs is a little different, and we'll explain why. Service level agreements typically are measuring when a credit card transaction from start to end, and we have that set at 50 milliseconds. So across the bottom, what we're looking at, or what we're seeing, is latency histogram percentage, where Aerospike is in red, the other is in blue, and we can see that 100% of the Aerospike database transactions are completing within less than a millisecond. Opposed to the other, half of them are completing less than a millisecond, the other half are completing in more than a millisecond. We also see from the throughput is identical at this point because both databases are able to handle the load. We can see that the latency is different, and that corresponds to our graph on the left, where the Aerospike latency is around 400 microseconds, and the other database latency is just over a millisecond. So all this corresponds very nicely. Now what we want to do is increase our confidence factor so we can show, we want our fraud detection algorithm to be a little better. So as we see that, now we have 50 credit card swipes per second, 350 iterations per swipe. We can see our confidence factor went up to about 99% or a little more, and we can see the corresponding throughput go up. And actually these are, as those two numbers get multiplied together, we can see what the total throughput, what the desired throughput should be. So let's crank it up a little more. Both databases right now are handling the load, so let's increase the load and see what happens. As we increase the load to 200 credit card swipes per second and 350 iterations per second, we can see that the latency completely increases for the other, whereas transactions are completing in more than 1 millisecond, more than 2 milliseconds, more than 3 milliseconds, etc. We also see the latency go up to the other at about 3.5 milliseconds. The Aerospike latency has remained constant at about 400 to 500 microseconds. We also see that the throughput can be handled kind of evenly. Both databases are handling the same number of throughput. However, we notice that the confidence factor has gone down considerably. There's less than 80% from the other, and the reason for that is because they are now missing SLAs. The more they miss SLAs, the more their confidence factor is affected, the less false positives they end up finding, the less dollars they end up saving. Let's crank it up a little more to see what more throughput does to it. So now we went up to 400 credit card swipes per second, 350 iterations per second, and now we can see that the other database has hit its limit of about 80,000 transactions per second. Again, this is divided by 3 servers. So this is an indication of how many more servers you will need with the other database to equal the throughput of Aerospike. So this gap right here lets us know that. We can see that Aerospike still is producing all of the database operations in less than a millisecond, and the latency has remained constant at about 500 microseconds. Let's crank it up one more time, and we can see throughput increase. We can see latency remain the same, and again, the latency increases for the other database from our latency graph as shown. The confidence factor is completely blown away with the other now because it's continually missing service level agreements, and we can see that the money saved using Aerospike as the underpinning database is much higher. So in conclusion, from this demonstration, we can see that Aerospike clearly has a higher throughput, lower latency, which provides your fraud detection algorithm with more data in a shorter amount of time. This allows your fraud detection algorithm to operate with a higher confidence factor and produces less false positives, consequently saving you considerable money. Thank you.